Hi guys. All right, topic 2.4. So we are looking at trade across the Sahara, aka trans-Saharan trade. So take a look at the regions that we'll be covering. It's quite expansive. All right, so just some background. So early Saharan cultures. So a couple of things that we know, and a couple of things that we don't know. Undatable rock paintings in the highland areas that separate the southern from the northern Sahara indicate the existence of an early Saharan hunting culture that was later joined by cattle breeders, and they're portrayed as looking like contemporary West Africans. The artwork indicated that the cattle breeders were later succeeded by horse herders who actually drove chariots. There, there is no evidence to support the earlier theory that these chariot drivers may have been refugees from Minoan Crete or Mycenaean Greece, but there's no evidence that shows us either their origin or their fate. The Highland rock art indicates that camel riders soon followed the chariot drivers. The camel was actually introduced from Arabia, and its introduction as well as domestication in the Sahara was probably related to the development of trans-Saharan trade. Written evidence and the design of camel saddles and patterns of camel use indicate a south to north diffusion of camel riding. The camel made it possible for people from the southern highlands of the Sahara to roam the desert just because they didn't need as much water and they could also store water. And what's pretty cool, guys, is historians can study camel saddle design, and from that, they can actually figure out the culture and they can figure out what people were actually using camels for. Now, camels are fun, they're adorable, but they're a little temperamental. They can be sweet and loving. They can also be vicious, and they can run like nobody's business. So I think that's just a little fun fact for us. But the fact that the camel saddle evolved based on what people needed is a great example of technology. Trade across the Sahara developed slowly when two local trading systems, one in southern Sahara and one in the north, were linked. Traders in the southern Sahara had access to the desert salt deposits, and they exported salt to the sub-Saharan regions in return for cola nuts and palm oil. Traders in the north actually exported agricultural products to Italy, and this dated back to the Roman Empire. So these regions here spent more time trading in the Mediterranean than they would with the rest of Africa. And that's simply because the camel and the camel saddle were not introduced, as well as the fact that Rome incorporated all of northern Africa into their territory, including Egypt with the death of Cleopatra. Sub-Saharan Africa is a large area with many different environmental zones and many geographical obstacles to movement. Some of the significant geographical areas are the Sahel, the tropical savanna, the tropical rainforest of the lower Niger and Zaire, the savanna area south of the rainforest, the steppe and desert below that, and then the temperate highlands of South Africa. All right, so we have a lot of information to go over here, and I want to talk about this. That's why a lot of it's still here. Scholars draw a distinction between the great traditions of the ruling elite culture in a civilization and the many small traditions of the common people. In sub-Saharan Africa, there was no overarching great tradition that developed. Sub-Saharan Africa is a vast territory of many small traditions, and historians know very little about the prehistory of these small traditions and the people because there was no written language. Most of the history that was told was through oral history. And while no great tradition emerged, it is possible to argue that there is a cultural unity to this region because many of the small traditions shared similar characteristics and were shared by people throughout the continent. African cultures, though, are highly diverse. There is an estimated over 2,000 spoken languages on the continent. And the numerous different food production systems reflect the diversity of African ecology and the difficulty of communication and trade between different groups. Another reason for the long dominance of small traditions is that no foreign power was able to conquer Africa and thus impose any sort of unified great tradition. Despite their diversity, African cultures displayed certain common features that attest to that underlying cultural unity. One of these features is the concept of kingship, in which kings are ritually isolated and oversee societies in which people are arranged in age groups and kinship divisions. And other common features include cultivation with the hoe and digging stick, the use of rhythm in African music, and the functions of dancing and mask wearing in rituals. One hypothesis offered to explain this cultural unity holds the people of sub-Saharan Africa are descended from the people who occupied the southern Sahara during its wet period and then migrated south to the Sahel, where these cultural traditions developed. And that actually leads us to discuss iron development and the Bantu migrations. Sub-Saharan Africa had its origins north of the equator and then spread southward. Ironworking also began north of the equator and in the early millennium CE and then spread southward. Linguistic evidence suggests the spread of iron and other technology in sub-Saharan Africa was the result of a phenomenon known as the Bantu migrations. The original homeland of the Bantu people was in the area on the border of modern Nigeria and Cameroon. And evidence suggests that the Bantu people spread out towards the east and the south through a series of migrations over a period of time in the first millennium. It's extremely difficult to trace the dissemination of ideas in a pre-literate society. One of the things that we do know, though, is that the Bantu people discovered how to smelt iron and then actually carried that with them through their migrations. And they discovered how to do this independently at the same time the people of Anatolia did, the Hittites of Anatolia. And this is pretty game-changing technology. So what we're going to see is the spread, like through the spread of iron, we can actually track the spread of the Bantu migrations. And that also helps us understand how culture developed. All right, guys, you know the drill. Send me an email if you have questions. Have a great night, y'all. Cheers.